Joining us now in President's Week, the assistant to general manager Patrik Allvin and the general manager of the Abbotsford Canucks. It's our pleasure to welcome Ryan Johnson back to Sekeres and Price. How you doing, RJ?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
You're more than welcome. No, thank you for making time. Since we last talked to you, you've had a promotion here. Your role has changed. So tell us about that to start.
I think more, of a title change more than the day-to-day change in a sense. We've got a great group and a great team in place here, and my responsibilities aren't really changing much at all, but glad to do my part. I really appreciate the responsibility and the trust from ownership and Jim Rutherford, Patrik Allvin, and so it's been a great experience for me since they've been on board.
Longevity is a rare thing in this business. You must appreciate that. It's tough to survive a couple of regimes just because change for the sake of change sometimes is the MO for professional sports. So that's fun to see, and even for the outsiders like us. I mean, just to see familiar faces continue, it's sort of a bit of a calming influence on the organization.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. It's hard for me to really believe I've been doing this as long as I have within the organization. What really started as a chance to try to give back to some young players. Something I always told my dad I would do is give back to the sport that was so good to me, and it's kind of just led to an opportunity. I think I've been very fortunate to work with some very good people through that time that I've learned a lot from and taken a lot from. So as you said, there's usually a lot of changeover in hockey in organizations, and feel fortunate to be playing a big part of a group that I think has a chance to do some great things.
I think the audience and hockey fans would be interested or curious. What does an assistant to the general manager do? Can you give us an example of something you do in concert with Patrik Allvin?
Well, I obviously report and speak with Patrik on all our decisions and the day-to-day operations of things behind the scenes and organizing, whether it's the immediate stuff within our roster decisions and call-ups and send-downs and working with our group from a cap standpoint, but also managing our AHL affiliate in Abbotsford, which has been amazing to get up and going. And, just being, that's a little scope of it. But, like I said, I report to Patrik. He and I speak a lot. I think he and I have had developed a very good relationship in a short amount of time, and a trust in a way that we want to do things. And we've, been trying to implement that through our departments and within the organization moving forward.
There's always that delicate dance for the American Hockey League club, Ryan, for, competitiveness, because you don't want them learning for the young players at the very least in a losing atmosphere, and yet, of course, not robbing spots. So we've asked you from year to year, and the cycle, will have its ebbs and flows, but it certainly seems like the last couple of years there's been a concerted effort with no harm done to the prospect spots to be a competitive team, to bring in guys certainly in their mid to late 20s that have been around and can lead this team to victory, while not necessarily the 35-year-old journeyman.
Yeah, I think it's important for us as an organization. We, especially our first year in Abbotsford, we wanted to be competitive and faced a lot of adversity, as everybody did, with COVID and injuries and managing taxi squads that, I don't think we really get to see how that team was meant to come together because of some of those things, but it's out of our control. I think really wanted to make a concerted effort moving into this year is making sure we get younger there. I want to develop players, whether they're drafted or free agents or AHL guys that we're taking a chance on. You do have to insulate those guys with players that have had experience, that have lived through the league, that can maybe the first half of the season be a little bit of a crutch to them and relied on. And you often find it's a Christmas league where January 1st, all of a sudden those guys that have been needing a little bit of support are the ones now being turning the table the other way and kind of leading the way. But I also I pride myself on almost second organization players that maybe they've been blocked or injuries, or especially I find now through COVID, I really feel players in their mid-20s have not had a chance to develop the way they may have pre-COVID, whether they're sitting on taxi squads or they haven't played a lot of games in those guys at 22 to 25. And I do think that there's some guys that are still coming along in their process that we've tried to target and take a look at, identify as maybe those guys can still be everyday NHL players and really impact our organization.
I've been fascinated by sorry, Matt, just to follow up here. I've been fascinated by the prospect, pardon the pun, that maybe the AHL is an untilled ground here in finding talent in the National Hockey League. We've got advanced stats up the yin-yang now to determine, who's worthy of what ice time. Is there still work to be done at the American Hockey League level to ensure the guy that you're talking about, the guy that was maybe forgotten by that first organization, maybe he is good. Maybe they just didn't see that he was good, but maybe he actually is good. Beyond just like, let's give him a try. Like, should we be looking at advanced stats, analytics, background stats for the American League as much as we are at the National League to find that talent?
Yeah, absolutely. And our pro group that I work with very closely has done an outstanding job of we are looking at years ahead of time almost of finding guys. And there's very good organizations that have depth that are competing for Stanley Cups, that very good players get pushed down or maybe not an opportunity, and they become Group 6 free agents and have an opportunity to explore free agency. It may be a delayed time as far as their development and what they actually have to offer to a team. And like I said, our pro group, we work hard on trying to identify guys. I also take pride in our staff, from our coaching staff in the American League to the development group, that trying to find guys that we can make have career years, get to the bottom of what they're about as players. And if we can transfer every once in a while, turn those guys into NHL players, I mean, that's worth its weight in gold as an organization.
When we talk about second organization players, can you give us an example? Is Dakota Joshua? Would he?
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy that I had in my hands because of a dual affiliation with St. Louis in Utica, that I got to see firsthand every day, see his practice habits, see the player that he was. I knew, seeing him a few years ago there in Utica in a training camp, that there was something special in this player, by the size, the way he skates, his competitiveness. He was, I think, a late bloomer of sorts, raw, but has found his identity. And you take note of these players, and him, being available on July 13th was something that, as an organization, we felt there was a guy that, even at his age, is still not even close to his ceiling and what he could be. So that's an example. And I think over the years, taking a lot of pride in finding, maybe they don't become everyday NHLers for 10 years, but you get them to a place and you're able to develop a relationship and a trust with these guys in a short amount of time, where they understand you have their best interests, and to watch them maybe face a few years of adversity, of bouncing around, and somebody believes in them and gives them a path to success, and they take it and run with it. I mean, I love that. And when they can turn out to be, maybe they don't play 500 games, but if they can contribute to your organization, give you depth through injury or times when you're roughed up a little, and come up and give you support and allow you to continue to compete, that's a real challenge in this game for me that I love.
Let's move on to some of the players at hand here. Danila Klimovich, you made the decision to keep him in the AHL last year as opposed to returning him to the Quebec Major Junior League. All in all, I'd like your evaluation of that decision, and what do you plan for Danila this year? What's going to be important for the next step in his development?
Well, and that was a decision I had to make, and wasn't an easy one. And where I am today with Danila and coming out of development camp, and I'm ecstatic that we made the decision and had the support to do it. I mean, a guy with that size and power but rawness in his game and some of the details, to send him to a league where he just goes physically dominates, I could see those habits and stuff that we wanted to improve declining even further. Because, I mean, I worry about young prospects that are always bigger than their opponents. They get away with things that they won't when they eventually face 6'3", 220-pound guys that are smarter than them, that have had to compete for. For me, it was getting Danila into an environment where we could coach him, We had the language barrier. We had COVID, new culture. We had a lot of things, and I wanted to have a hands-on part in his development, not just as a player, but as a person. And so, him making the decision to stay in Vancouver for the summer, he wanted to continue access. We've got him, English speaking language to just allow him to not miss a step within the coaching. He's working directly in our hands, even just the relationship that he has already with our staff. And I can see him and give him a hug and how you doing? How are things? And we can have some conversations that are very, some are hard and some are very supportive and pushing him. But to see now where he will be come September, I am certain he would not be there had we just cast him off and said, go score 60 goals and we'll see you around the block in September and see how you're doing. And so I expect more responsibility for him in Abbotsford. I want a higher role. I want more responsibility, not just production-wise. I want him, and we talked about it, responsibility in his own end, his wall play, his puck management, all these little things that are going to allow him to use his skill set of his power and his shot in a fierceness. I mean, even seeing him development camp in drills, the difference in his intensity and understanding the compete, and even in the scrimmage we did on the Thursday, I mean, he must have finished 7 or 8 checks, and which was impressive to me, is that he's taking the information. He understands, as many young players have to, is to get the puck in your hands, you have to go get it and find a way to be a part of a forecheck and puck battles. And you see a lot of young players sit in the middle of the ice and say, well, can you get me the puck and I'll just stay here and wait for it. That's not the NHL way. And so I'm happy, really happy with where he's at.
He was scoring goals at a furious pace where he was, and, of course, bursting out of the scene at the U18s as well. Did he ever get down on himself? Because, of course, that scoring clip was not going to be there for a teenager in the American League. How did he handle that? Because still a kid, living on his own. Like, there was a lot of external forces at work there. How did he handle maybe the disappointment of not scoring as many goals as he'd like?
Oh, and I won't lie to you. It was a challenge. That he's very one of Danila's greatest attributes, and sometimes his greatest deficiency, is that he expects a lot of himself. He's very hard on himself. We've talked about his body language, how he presents himself on the ice. You watch him a lot of last year. A scoring chance doesn't go in, stick off the glass, punch to the side of the head, onto the bench, and that's. And I've told him I love that about him, and we just need to redirect it a little bit, that emotion, where he can manage it. We've talked about it. He and I, we even giggle about it, even in development camp of play, and he can a little body language, and he knows I've got the eyeballs on him, but he's thinking about it. And that's a part of he turned 19 playing in the American League. That's not a red flag at all. It's natural. It's just, we just have to redirect that energy where he can use it to his advantage.
Jeremy Colton's your new coach at the AHL level, and Trent Cull, who you've worked with for some time, is moving up to the Vancouver Canucks bench. Can you tell us about both of those moves and what kind of coach you have in Jeremy?
Well, Jeremy, obviously his resume speaks for himself, and he was thrust into an NHL position. What most have said at a very early in his process as a coach. I think he's very well thought, a very smart coach, empowering to people around him. I'm excited to work with him on a day-to-day basis. His experience, he knows the American League, but also understands the NHL, and it's great for young players to be able for him to relate on both sides of it. He's very excited, as he knows I am, of developing some young players and delving into some young bodies that I know we're going to have in Abbotsford and be able to work with and grow. Trent, as our team was there for a while on an island in Utica, had done a fantastic job that a lot of people couldn't understand the day-to-day and developed, some players that we end up losing on waivers or to expansion that are now in the NHL and NHL players. And we had some challenges there of support players and just organizational support. When you're that far, when you're on the other side of the country, he is extremely structured in what he does. Very has a great way about communicating with players with a hardness and an understanding where they want to play for him. There's not a harder worker as far as his day-to-day and what he puts into it. I think he's in a great spot now. We're excited for him to support Bruce and work with some of our young defensemen. I know some of the young guys that he has been around that we now have there are elated that he's going to be there and supporting them. Great energy, personality, is not wears everything on his sleeve, but it's really going to, with Mike Yeo and Bruce and Jason King, and that we're excited about the group we have there.
What happened with Curtis Sanford? He was announced as coming back to Abbotsford and then off to Toronto. And where are you at on a goaltending coach at the HL level?
Well, obviously, I mean, part of my job in hiring in the American Hockey League is you hope to elevate into the National Hockey League within your organization. But sometimes you've got to you lose people to other places. Curtis did a fantastic job. He came on full time in Abbotsford this year. Did a great job with a very tough 3 goaltender system because we were guarding against COVID in Vancouver and accessing players, and obviously it was a challenge. And he's built up a reputation in a short amount of time across the league, and obviously he goes from us in Abbotsford to the spotlight of Toronto and that situation, but well deserved, great at what he does, but an even better person. So I was excited for him to move on, and that's a part of my job, is to elevate people to, whether they're players, staff, or training staff. I want them all to get a chance at the NHL someday.
You've got the assets of those assistant coaches, but you've also got the assets of Chris Higgins and Mike Komisarek now as well. 2 really tough guys to get along with. I'm sure pretty easygoing guys, and they get along with each other.
You're forgetting
so well.
Samuelson in Europe,
yes,
too.
Exactly. So
Mike and
a trio of real characters, but I'm sure guys that can communicate so well to the young group. How integral are they? Because the coaches are the day-to-day coaches, but what's the flow like of those? Well, we'll say the 2 that are based in North America. Mike will be over there, but what's the division of labor there?
Well, I couldn't be more happy with the group that we built out, and obviously Danny and Hank, you include them into the bunch. And Michael Samuelson wanted to create a support group and a development group that we could kind of touch on all sides between Mike and Chris and Michael, Danny and Hank, to support our prospects that are around the world. Danny and Hank are going to spend a lot more time around our group in Vancouver. They'll also be in Abbotsford, as they built a great relationship with Trent and that staff and supporting there. And I think, it was awesome watching them learn and understand the American League process, which they had really no clue of how that went on because they never lived it as players. But I think we've developed a staff now and a group that there'll really be no stone unturned as far as Mike Komisarek, a defenseman, and Chris Higgins, and we feel like we're going to give our players, our draft picks, a chance to have every resource possible sitting in that room in our development camp. And you get Yogi Sachkovsky, our skills coach, Mackenzie Braid, our skating coach. I just feel like we've got a group that cares so much about this organization and wants to see it succeed, and not really a job to any of us. We have a vested interest in this organization. Most of us have played for it, and Mike Komisarek, who has a great experience. If you look at being a high pick and pressure and having to battle and navigate his way through a pro career, he's got a lot of great information that he's excited to pass on to a lot of these young players.
You played without a captain last year in Abbotsford. Is that the plan again? Do you have any captain candidates? And what are your thoughts
always
on
have
letter?
Candidates. I think for me, it wasn't. I didn't want to force anything. We had such a new group. We had a lot of new faces, and it took us probably until December to really become a team. I thought we had some really good players, but actually to feel like we had a group and a team, and I felt it happened kind of organically. There wasn't one bus driver that we felt, hey, that is the guy that is bringing this. I hope it presents itself But again, it's not something I think we had, 3 assistants on the road and 3 at home and thought they did a great job. But I'm a guy that it really has to be obvious and present itself. And I don't want to force anybody that it's not natural into. And depending on how things fall out of Vancouver camp and what players are there, I'll make a decision at that point.
There's 2 guys that I think that people are curious about in terms of their roles, and that's Jack Rathbone and Will Lockwood. Currently, they're in that gray area. It could go either way, dip a toe here, dip a toe there. What do you suspect? We'll take injury because, usually there's an injury that helps to clarify these things a little bit. But what do you expect of those 2 players in particular and their ability to be at the NHL level for maybe a full season?
Well, I think we've got high expectations for Jack Rathbone. I mean, last year dealing with so much adversity of injury and COVID, and obviously he had an injury that could have been a lot worse than it was when he took the hit from behind there in Bakersfield. But the struggle with him was getting more than 6, 7, 8 games consecutively before he was on the sidelines again. But you still look at the bulk of his work. He had a pretty impressive year. We had intended to get him some games eventually at the end of the year and give him a chance for Jim Rutherford and Patrik to get a real look at him at that level. Obviously, with some of the challenges, again, that he was facing with injury and then, our team being in a playoff hunt and right up to the end and, variables that didn't allow for that. But we expect a lot from him. I expect him to have a huge training camp. He's having a huge summer. Again, the kid works his butt off, and so we expect him to come to push to be on our team. I think it's time. He's had to learn the hard way in the last couple of years of turning pro and dealing with just a ton of things, as everybody has in the world. But I think it's really helped him in his process. And Will, his development improvement since he's turned pro is in a low amount of games. Has been so fun to watch. He's taken huge steps, very coachable kid that takes direction, got a chance at the end of the year to play a substantial amount of games and things that he did well and things that we'd like to see more from him coming into training camp. And again, I think that was a huge learning experience for him. And I think at times he respected too much within his own team and on the other team and spent some time watching. I think that experience sometimes gets that out of your head and, okay, I belong here and I can't sit and watch. I've got to, because he's an aggressive player, right? He skates, he's physical. And if he's sitting around watching, then he's not playing his game. But again, the kid works his butt off in the summer, takes instruction very well, and I expect him to come in and have a very big training camp for us.
Would look good beside Ryan Johnson perhaps at one point, huh? Mm-hmm. Is he that kind of a player? Is bottom 6 kind of make things happen kind of guy?
I could say this, it's the biggest compliment I could say to players is that there's guys that I have and that I work with that I say I wish I could have suited up with those guys. We would have been all right together. And those 2 are. You speak of Jack and Will. They play the game the right way. They approach the game like professionals. It's in their blood, and they're going to find every way to impact the game, and they care about it. So those are 2 guys that, I would have had no problem playing next to. That's for sure.
Lastly, for me, Ryan, needless to say, when one looks at an AHL schedule, there's a lot of things that jump out to the uneducated of how AHL schedules work.
Yeah,
because they do have their peculiarities. What are your overall thoughts on the schedule you've been handed for this upcoming year?
Well, it's
jumped out to you.
It has a challenge. I mean, our travel in Abbotsford is first year and COVID. We've sorted out a lot of things about how we can make it efficient as possible. I'm excited to start on the road. I like starting on the road. You see in the NHL with our schedule, Abbotsford, you get on the road, you get together. You travel, your hotels. I mean, I would do a 7-game road trip to start a year because I just think it gets you away from home and focused on what you need to. And then we've got some great blocks at home in that first part of the year, Friday, Saturday games that I think I like because it gives us a week of development and skills and working, especially in the AHL. You get a lot done from Monday to Friday that you can really take steps, whether it's on ice and off ice. So, no, there's some and it doesn't hurt in the dead of January, February, be heading down into California in those loops. And
No.
our players appreciate it. Shorts and flip flops, they get a chance to get out. And I'll say this, from Utica, where we had, I think, 12 or 13 nights on the road sometimes. I mean, I know we spend a lot of time on the road, but it gives us a chance to do some fun things with our players and actually spend time together. That's one thing I will say, being out west. I know the travel gets long sometimes, but you kind of live and breathe together when you're out there on the road, and I think it benefits the group as a whole.
Fine. I think there were some learnings about what this looks like in the same province, having the AHL affiliate close by. Overall, would you say it was a success? And I don't necessarily mean season tickets or anything like that. That will happen as it happens. But just operationally, do you think it worked as well as you could expect it to here in year one?
100%. It like I said, and our setup and experience at Utica was fantastic, but you felt like two separate entities. You felt now I feel like we've got all resources on deck. The support from just down the road from Vancouver to Abbotsford, we have access to everything from organizationally and in cap tight era, and you can manipulate roster moves and down the road, back down the road. We can reward players that are playing well. We're going to find a way to get them. They can play in Abbotsford on a Friday and play down in Vancouver at home on a Saturday night. And likewise, I think it holds players accountable that are up and realizing, hey, I'm hearing about these guys down the road that are playing some good hockey. I better get myself going here. Where, we used to have to plan for transactions 2-3 days in advance to try to find out how we could make it happen. It's been fantastic, and to do it all, Rob Maloney and his group and the support from ownership to get this up and going in a COVID time. I'm excited to get back to maybe some normalcy and full fans in our building and really grow on what we were able to do in the first year.
Last word belongs to you, RJ. Anything you want to say to the fans out there about this upcoming year?
Oh, just again, we appreciated from all the patience through it. This was an arduous and trying time for people in general through what we've gone through the last few years, and the support that always continued to happen when we were able to have people in the building. But not just that. I remember even the Abbotsford going into playoffs and seeing people with jerseys on in bars or sitting in places outdoors that they could watch the game. I mean, people really tried hard to continue to be fans in a very tough situation, and you hope as an organization you provided a little bit of a distraction. You talk about COVID and even the flooding in the Fraser Valley that was awful to see, and the people that were we really thought about that every day and how we could make it right for people that suffered a lot, and hopefully getting back to a little bit of normal times, we can give back some more. I know from our standpoint, it's very important for us to entrench ourselves in the community and being a first year in Abbotsford, again, because some of the league rules and things we couldn't do a lot. I know from our staff, from myself, or even our players are excited to get back into the community and thank them for what they did in welcoming that entire group in year one there. So yeah, that's it from me.